Bilikis, you're welcome back to my channel. How you all doing? Hope you are great, because I am, as you can see. Today we'll be making a tutorial on a monostrap dress, and trust me, it is so beautiful with a flare on the upper part, which is so beautiful and sexy. So, but before we continue, you can follow me on Instagram, Bilikis Signatures, and also on Facebook. You can join our sewing group. It is Sewing Innovations. It is a lovely group whereby we put up illustrations on some outfits. You get to ask questions, and some of the other members could reply you. And trust me, you will love it. So just try to search for it on Facebook, and the administrators will be waiting to approve your request. So right now, let's go back to our work table and get started. So for this dress, I will be making use of this stretchy fabric. It is a bodycon dress, so it doesn't need that or whatever. So it is so stretchy, as you can see. Can you see? It is extremely stretchy. So I won't be needing a zipper for this, but you can use a cotton material, but it will have a zipper. So for this, it doesn't require any zipper, and all you need also is your basic bodice pattern, and then we will get started. So to fold my fabric, I will use the widest circumference of my body to fold my fabric, which is the hip, and that is around 44 inches. So we will be folding into 4. Looking at it, I folded this way. Let me see that. The length of my dress will be 40, including the hemming allowance. So I will fold this way because I want to check with the width of this dress if it will be enough. So can you see the way I folded? I folded into 2, then again I'm folding over again. So then I will check out. Quarter of my hip circumference is 11, and here I have around 14. So that means it is more than enough to accommodate my widest circumference. The next thing now is to determine the length of the dress, and I said I want it to be 40 with hemming allowance inclusive, which I will do now. So right now I've determined the length of my dress, which I said will be 40 inches with the hemming allowance. So the next thing now is to insert half of my armhole. Half of my armhole, which is 8.5. Then the next one will be my waist, which is 16 inches. Then my hip, which is 24 inches, and then the length of my dress. I'm going to make this into a straight line. And in case you are using a cotton material, the back should be more by 1 inch because of the zipper allowance. So right now I'll make this into a straight line. So right now, after making it into a straight line, the next thing is to determine the shoulder slope. It is a monostrap, but we have to do that because one of it will still have the upper part. So right now, what I will do is to insert the 3 inches here, and then the 8 inches. You should be familiar with that by now. Now we'll come down by 1 inch. It is here. And then use my ruler to connect that. So that will be the shoulder slope. This is what we have. So the next thing now is to insert my horizontal circumference. So for my bust, quarter of my bust is 10.5, which is here. And then I'll add 1 inch seam allowance. But note, if you are someone that you want your dress to be extremely tight on you, you could ignore this seam allowance. If you are using a very stretchy fabric, so you could ignore the seam allowance and just use your normal body circumference, and then you could just take in 1 inch from it. It's always very nice. But I just want it to be okay, so I would include my seam allowance. So back to the waist, it doesn't require any that, so I will insert quarter of my waist measurement. It's just like drafting your basic dress pattern. So I have my 9 inches here, and then my 1 inch seam allowance. Over to my hips, quarter of my hip measurement is 11 inches, and then the extra 1 inch seam allowance. Going back here, depending on how tapered you want it to be, that totally depends on you. I normally do -1 from my divided hip measurement, but for this I will just make it 1.5. You could go in as much as 2. So here I will have 9.5. 9.5 will be here with my 1-inch seam allowance. Then the next thing now is to connect it all through. It's a very easy dress to make. You could have a party and decide to make it in less than 15 minutes. It's as easy as that. So I will just use the end of my hip cup to connect it, because this is a fitted dress. And can you see that was pretty good? So back to my upper part. So now for the armhole, I will insert my shoulder measurements here and also on the chest line. And then I will make it into a straight line. I will determine the midpoint from the slope, and this is where the midpoint is. For the front armhole, I will come in by 3/4 inch. You should be familiar with all that by now. And then connect. And this will be for the back armhole. We're as good as done. If you're adding sleeve to yours, you could just leave it like this. But because we are having a sleeveless dress, though we have a flare at the upper part, so you won't want to leave your armhole here. You won't want to use your exact shoulder measurement because it will look so funny. So first you will determine the width of the neckline, but I will be using about 4.5 to 5. So since I have 3 here, so the remaining, maybe I should make it 5. So the remaining 2 or 1, I will decide to make it 4. So this is 3, the remaining 1 inch will be here. So for a sleeveless, I always advise you do a minimum of 3/4. You come in by 3/4, but you could go in as much as 1, 2, 3, depending on what you want. So from here, I just want a distance of like 2.5 inches. So this is what I will have. So this is where my sleeveless top will stop from the neckline. This is the neck width, and this is the distance I want to be around the shoulder. So what I will do now is to take my armhole curve and connect. This is the front armhole now. So can you see what I have? So this is what it will look like, and for the back it will be something like this. So this is for the front and that's for the back. So for the neckline, I will just leave it for now and then trim this off. As I've always emphasized, do not forget your shoulder sewing allowance. So 1/2 inch is okay. So I have 1/2 inch here and then 1/2 inch here. I will just cut out this before we continue. So right now, for the neckline, you can decide however or wherever, either on the left or on the right, wherever you want your monostrap to be. So, but to make it easier, I will just leave it on this side. So remember, we have already taken the neck width. So now for the neck depth, it depends on your preference, but I will just make it about 6 inches. Can you see what I have? And then I will go this way. So I'll be having the same neckline for both the back and the front. So since I have this now, I will just trim off, I will open it up and trim off the back armhole. Then we can open it up completely. So right now I will trim off the front armhole. Since the front armhole is done, I will have to open up the fabric and place it back on each other. So right now I have both pattern placed on each other. Can you see that? So the next thing now, remember I want my monostrap to be on this part. If you want it to be on this part, just try to draft it here. But since I want it on this side and I already inserted how deep I want it to be, so the next thing now is to take my hip curve and then just plait it this way down to where the armhole hangs. You could use your free hand too, because the hip curve makes it easier. So this is what I have. Can you see that? Then I will take my scissors to cut this off. Can you see what we have? So right now, so this is what we have. So the next thing now is to determine the flare in which we will impute here. So you have to determine the length of the flare. You want it to be 6, 7, 8, 10, depending on you. So I will just turn this to the right side for you to see how it looks. So this is what it looks like on the right side. So now to determine the flare in which we will put on the upper part, you could decide to have a full circle flare or a half circle flare. But for mine, I will decide to have a full circle flare to it. So what will I do? All I have to do is measure. Remember, this is both the front and the back. I'll just take my measuring tape and measure. Remember, the shoulder seam allowance is inclusive here, which is ½ inch. So just know that at the back of your mind. Then I will take my measuring tape to measure all through. So here I have 21. So 21 minus ½ inch, because we would have joined our shoulder seam allowance before adding the flare. So that was why I removed ½ inch from this 21 inches. So that would give me 20.5, that is 20.5. So multiply by 2 because we have both the front and the back together. So that would give us 41 inches. So all you have to do, since I want a full circle flare, is to divide that by 6.28. That is 41 divided by 6.28, which will give me 6.5. So the next thing now is to take my leftover fabric and show you how to fold. This is my leftover fabric. So what you have to do when folding for a full circle is this. Can you see that? I folded into 2 this way and I have this. So I will take this edge and fold into 2 again. Can you see that? So I want the length of my flare to be 10 inches plus the hemming allowance inclusive. So, and I said my radius is 6.5. So first I have to determine whether this will be enough for that. This is long enough, but this is shorter. So since I want it to, the length of my flare to be what? To be 10 inches plus the hemming allowance inclusive. So now from here I will determine whether it will be enough for my radius. So that means it is more than enough because my radius is 6.5. So it will be somewhere around here. So it is perfect. So the next thing now is to insert my radius. 6.5. 6.5 will be here. Then I keep rotating my measuring tape. 6.5. And I will do that all through. Now the radius is formed. I will take my chalk to just curve it out. If you have a compass, that would be better. So we have our radius formed. Then the next thing now is to determine the length of the flare. So all I will have to do is to determine the length of the flare, which I said was 10 inches plus 6.5, which will give me 16.5. So all I will do is from this edge measure 16.5, which is here. So I will measure that all through. So now since that is done, I will mark out the curve. And in case you still have a problem understanding this half circle of a tin or a full circle, just check out my video on how to make a full circle skirt and also how to make a half circle skirt. I also made a detailed video on how to calculate the radius of each circle, so you can check that out. Can you see now we are as good as done? The next thing is to cut out the radius and the lower part. So this is what we have. Can you see that? So in case, because we added the seam allowance also to this, you can just decide to cut out both sides here before adding it to your fabric, because we added the seam allowance to it when we're cutting. So I will just cut it into two like this, so to make it easier. So right now this is the main bodice and this is the flare we just cut out. I've divided it into two. But if you don't want to cut it into two, the reason why I cut it into two was because I have included the seam allowance before cutting the flare. Or better still, you could just ignore this seam allowance, then measure whatever you get, then you can use to cut it out. So this one will be for the front and one will be for the back. So just looking at it this way, let's just place it this way. So can you see, this will be for the front. So by the time you sew it, it will fall. Can you see? It will be wavy. Can you see that? So that's for the front, and the other one will be for the back. Can you see, this is a very easy dress and will be perfect for a date night with hubby. So let me just go to my sewing machine and just couple it together. So that is just it on how to make this monostrap dress with a flare at the upper part. So just give it a try. If my tutorial has been helpful, give me a thumbs up and do not forget to tell your friends about it and then subscribe. Bye.